Everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. We got a great Q&A for you today. We're going to try to keep the topic on blood sugar relations. So if you've got nutritional questions revolving around blood sugar issues, now's the time to get those questions in the chat box so that I can do my best to get as many answered today. If you missed our class, our crash course on how to control blood sugar without drugs, very important class, over an hour long. I want to make sure that you go back and watch that if you want more in-depth knowledge around nutrition and blood sugar control. And we'll put a link to that class just below here for you, just in case you missed it. So again, if you missed it, go back and watch it. Beyond that, let's dive into your questions. Let's see here. So somebody's asking about thiamine. Which kind of thiamine? Thiamine is vitamin B1, and it's very important in the breakdown of blood glucose. It's part of the Krebs cycle, and it helps the body to process and break glucose down so that we can get to ATP, or energy. The type that I recommend, the most potent type, is something called benfotiamine. It's a fat-soluble vitamin B1. It's much better absorbed than other forms of B1. So ideally, in an ideal situation, benfotiamine. If you can't find a benfotiamine, there's also thiamine hydrochloride that works pretty well. And there's something called allithiamine that also works pretty well. So these are all good versions. Now, again, if you're trying to high-dose vitamin B1, benfotiamine, a lot of great research on that particular formula. And so that's what I would recommend as a top if you can get a hold of it. Okay, pertinent question. What do you do about sunshine when it's so cold outside? Of course, we need vitamin D to regulate blood sugar. We need vitamin D to regulate the production of insulin. And so very important that you're getting your vitamin D, or trying to get your vitamin D, through the winter months. So during the winter, when there's a lack of sunshine, you certainly can have your vitamin D levels monitored and checked to make sure they're not going low and they're not becoming deficient. You can also eat foods that are rich in vitamin D. Predominantly, that's going to be liver, eggs, and mushrooms would be probably three of the top foods that you're going to get natural vitamin D from. And then beyond that, you want to try to get outside as much as you can. In the winter months, if you live, especially if you live up north, check out the potential for owning a UV light, like a UV light system. The recommendation I have on that, there's a company called Sperti, S-P-E-R-T-I. They make a really good one that you can buy for home use during those winter months, especially, again, if you are cooped up for long periods of time. Let's see, Grace asking, what about exocrine pancreatic insufficiency? Does that affect blood sugar or blood glucose? So pancreas has two functions. It has an endocrine function. The endocrine function of your pancreas predominantly is to make insulin. Insulin is the hormone that controls blood glucose and helps glucose get from the blood into the cell where it can be converted into energy. The other function, or one of the other functions of the pancreas, is what's oftentimes referred to as the exocrine function. And that particular function of the pancreas largely is a digestive function. So your pancreas produces enzymes like amylase and lipase that are then secreted through ducts into the small intestine to help you digest your food. Now, the pancreas also makes something called bicarbonate, which neutralizes stomach acid. So think of those as exocrine functions of the pancreas, very important for digestion, where this can impact your blood sugar. Again, it's not insulin, but it's the digestibility of your food. If your food is not being broken down properly, not being absorbed properly, could that affect your blood sugar? It absolutely could. So it is more of an indirect effect rather than a direct effect, but certainly it can. If you've been diagnosed with pancreatic insufficiency of an exocrine variety, you might ask your doctor as well about digestive enzymes as supplementals to help your pancreas or to support your pancreatic function. It's a pretty simple and low side effect thing that you can do to support your digestion of foods. And again, that helps regulate your blood sugar, because if you can't digest your foods very well, your blood sugar is going to suffer as a result. Let's see here, Yvonne Dr. Osborne, apples are healthy, but sugar levels are immensely increased over the years. Should I be concerned? I'm not quite sure I understand your question, Yvonne. Yes, apples can be healthy. Are you asking me if you're eating apples on a regular basis and your blood sugars have been going up over the years as a result of eating apples, should you be concerned? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, part of it could be portion, you know. I mean, with apples, there's a diverse variety of different species of apples as well as sizes, etc. There's also different ways in which you can eat an apple. Eating the apple versus, say, applesauce or something else. I mean, there are glycemic differences between those types of things. But again, without understanding your question any better, I mean, I would be concerned if your blood sugars are going up immensely. It may or may not be apple related. It could be a lot of different things. I'd go back and watch our crash course. Or rephrase your question and I can do a better job answering for you. Let's see, Galena. Hello, Dr. Osborne. I have hypoglycemia for 15 years and I have to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Trying keto makes it worse. You probably have micronutrient deficiencies that make it hard for you to basically to get to glucose and process it into energy. You know, one of the common scenarios we'll see in people that don't do well on keto but still have high blood sugar and find themselves reactively eating, the ups and the downs, the hanger, the hungry, angry symptoms. Chromium deficiency, B vitamin deficiency, magnesium deficiency, carnitine deficiency if you do worse with keto. Carnitine is required to taxicab or to shuttle fat into the cell, into the area of the cell where energy is made from fat. So those of you following a keto-based diet, if you have low levels of carnitine, you might be symptomatic trying to be keto. Is actually one of the things that can contribute to a lot of the side effects that people who don't do well with keto have. And so you might try carnitine. Carnitine as a supplement, you can take anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams a day safely as a starting point for that. Best foods to eat to stop the sugar craving. Anything that's sugar-free, Rose, and I don't mean like sugar-free as in it can, instead of having sugar or processed sugar, it contains Splenda or other artificial sweeteners. I mean any whole real food that does not have added sugars, processed sugars in it. Because one of the reasons people crave sugar is that when you're used to eating high sugar, high glucose foods, high glycemic foods, what that actually does is it alters your microbiome. Your microbiome, that's the bacteria, the fungi, the other microorganisms that live inside of your GI tract. So when you feed the microbiome a lot of sugar, then what ends up happening is those species that ferment sugar, that really enjoy sugar, they start growing out of control. And one of those is yeast. Specifically, many of you probably heard of Candida, but Candida type of yeast, if you are in a habit or have had a habit of eating a lot of sugar and you're trying to break that habit, you have to get past those microorganisms in the first phase. In other words, you're going to have cravings for 2 to 3 weeks because those microorganisms will hijack your nervous system, your vagus nerve, and they will send messages to your brain to crave sugar. So part of stopping food cravings, sugar cravings specifically, is to not eat sugar. And I know that it's kind of like, okay, duh, but you might also try supplementation with chromium and extra magnesium and B vitamins to help alleviate some of those cravings as well, at least in those first few weeks. But once you get beyond those first few weeks, if you stopped eating sugar and you're eating real, genuine, whole foods, again, that are lower carbohydrate glycemic, you're going to naturally stop craving sugar. It's almost like clockwork around weeks 2, 3 that we see people where their sugar cravings go away. So part of it is just stoically pushing through those first few weeks. Is the glucose ketone index a good measure of the overall health of our mitochondria? The GKI tracks the ratio of blood glucose to ketones as a single value. I mean, I don't think so. I don't think there's any one great test that's a fantastic measure of overall health of mitochondria. I think there are a lot of tests that can give you feedback or that can give you insight, but I wouldn't put that at the top of something that I would particularly say you have to monitor. Hi, Dr. Osborne. I have at times stomach upset and gas from eating fruits such as apples, pears, and ripe bananas. Is this due to the fruit sugar, or is it more likely fruit intolerance? So you can have, again, what I was saying earlier, opinion about the microbiome, you could have fermenting types of bacteria or yeast overgrowing inside of you, and now they're producing kind of a gas byproduct when you eat those certain fruits. Like hydrogen methane gases can be produced, which can create a stomach upset, can also create gas and pressure. So that is a possibility, but it's also a possibility that that when you eat those, that you could be allergic to certain ones. I mean, it's possible to be allergic to all three of those things. If those are the three you're finding, it's also possible that you have a problem with processing fructose very well. And so there's a situation called fructose intolerance, and a lot of people can develop it, but it's very commonly, what I see in people with fructose intolerance is it's very common they have low levels of copper, and then they don't tolerate fruit sugars very well at all. So that may also be another reason. Let's see here. Is it bad to eat a lot of dates after dinner or alone at lunch? I can't eat a whole box. I don't know what that means. I can't eat a whole box of dates a day, or is that I can eat a whole box of dates a day? Well, anyway, let's answer what we know you're asking, which is it bad to eat a lot of dates after dinner or alone at lunch? Maybe not, and maybe so. I'd say largely that's going to depend on you. If you're not allergic to dates, it's probably not an issue there. If your blood sugars are not controlled well and you're eating a lot of dates, dates certainly can drive up blood sugar. If you're eating as a whole, if by eating that many dates at 2 meals, you're driving up your total carbohydrate consumption in favor of metabolic issues like hypertriglyceridemia, elevations in glucose, then yeah, it absolutely can be a problem. A quick thing you could do, Anna, is get you one of these glucose monitors and see how much those dates are affecting your blood glucose, after you're eating them. And if they're really driving up your blood sugar, you might want to reconsider. Okay, let's see here. I have a friend who is a fruitarian, a raw fruitarian. Should she be concerned about her blood sugar levels? She has hypothyroidism and says that she has never felt better. Well, you can't argue with somebody feeling so fantastic by changing their diet. However, all that being said, yeah, I would have concerns about somebody just eating fruit. It's imbalanced. You're not going to get all the nutrients you need from fruit. A lot of the modern fruits today are hybridized to contain, to be sweeter, and so they contain a lot more sugar, a lot more fructose and other sugars. So I know I see a lot of people when they go on a diet like that. So if she's a pure raw fruitarian where she's only eating fruit, let's just say, for example, that she's gluten sensitive. And her whole life she was eating gluten, and then all of a sudden she switched to a raw fruit diet, and she feels better. Why? It's not because she's eating fruit. She's feeling better because she's not getting exposure to gluten, right? So that is a classic example that I have seen countless times over multiple decades of practice, where people make a dietary change, which is a restrictive dietary change, and they feel better, and they think they feel better for a reason that's actually different than why they feel better. But eating raw fruit for the rest of her life is probably going to land her in hot water and land her in malnutrition, among other problems, including problems with her blood sugar. So, if she feels great, I would encourage you to encourage her to follow up with a good doctor who can monitor her blood for a number of the markers that would show potential metabolic problems starting to show up as a result of being on that diet over a long period of time. Is there an A1C level limit to reverse type 2 diabetes? This is Alexandra asking this question. Is there a point of no return where we should take medication? I reversed mine once 10 years ago. I don't know if I can do it again. Of course you can do it again, Alexandra. Reversing diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is one of the easiest things in the world to do. It's not hard. It might be hard mentally. It might be hard in terms of you giving up some conveniences and doing some things that that you're not used to doing that make you currently uncomfortable. But how do we grow as people? We do things that make us uncomfortable, generally speaking, so that we can grow. But there's not a limit. You could be diabetic for 30 years and you can reverse it. If your A1C is 14, you can take that back down to 5 if you take the right dietary habits and the right exercise habits and the right lifestyle and behavioral habits, and you take them seriously and apply them consistently over time. So don't give up, stay the course. Somebody's asking about pacha bread, which is a sourdough buckwheat. What are my thoughts on it? I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't eat it. Those are my thoughts on it. If you followed me for any length of time and you've read my book, No Grain, No Pain, you know how I feel about buckwheat. If you haven't followed me for any length of time, I would encourage you to read No Grain, No Pain and do a deeper dive on why we want to avoid all grains as well as pseudo grains, which is where buckwheat falls. It falls into that pseudo grain category. I'm type 2 diabetic. Should I drink Glucerna? Only if you want to maintain your type 2 diabetic status. So like if you hold, Joan, if you hold like that type 2 diabetic status to be important to you, then drink lots of Glucerna, because Glucerna, very frankly, is poison. It is a high fructose corn syrup beverage with some protein in it that doctors are trying to pawn off, and the company that produces it, they're trying to pawn that off as something healthy for people to control their blood sugar. But Glucerna is poison, in my opinion. I would stay as far away from that as you possibly could, and that's true of other drinks that are similar. My family member has developed HPV virus on the skin. If you've got a family member with herpes virus, skin eruptions, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do nutritionally to support it. I mean, one would be L-lysine combined with vitamin C, combined with andrographis. We have a product called Virid, V-I-R-I-D, and so that would be something I would share with you that, could be used in that situation to support immune function, as far as that goes. Let's see here. Regarding blood sugar, what's the healthy amount of carbs we can eat per day? So it's not like one amount, because I mean, if you're a 300-pound guy versus a 100-pound female, there's going to be a difference in terms of quantity and need. If we're talking about generalizing, though, Penny, I would suggest that if you're eating a healthy amount of total calories, in other words, if you're not gaining weight and the amount of calories you're eating in the course of a day is generally keeping your weight stable, and you're at a healthy body weight and body composition, keeping your carbohydrate in that third range is, in my opinion, is ideal for balance. So if we look at the macronutrients, there's carbohydrates, there's fats, there's proteins, the three, what we call macronutrients. We see a lot of this in nature. Everywhere you look, you see balance. Where you see imbalance, typically in nature, you see problems start to arise. And I believe firmly, and I've seen this clinically, that when people get too far out of balance for too long, we start to see problems showing up. Now, so I recommend what's called the rule of thirds: a third carb, a third fat, a third protein as your total caloric intake. Now, you don't have to get out a calculator and count, perfectly every single day, but you should strive for that level of balance within your diet. Most Americans today are 60, 70+% of their calories are coming from carbohydrate. And this is why we see the obesity rates. This is basically an epidemic of carbohydrate toxicity. The solution for a lot of people over the last 5 to 10 years has been to go on keto diets or even carnivore diets, which are the antidote to toxic carbohydrate loads. But should you then stay on keto and carnivore for the rest of your life? I think we're going to see a robustness of problems that will manifest as a result of not having balance on the other side as time goes on. Again, many of you probably following a carnivore, maybe following even a keto diet. I'm not telling you that you're doing the wrong diet for you. I'm just telling you my perception over many, many decades of practice has been, when people create imbalance to solve imbalance, the imbalance they create to solve the imbalance usually creates a new imbalance that then they're trying to figure out how to solve. And so what I like to see people do better is go toward balance and consistency. And so when you're asking me how many carbs a person should eat in the course of the day, they should be high quality, real food, whole food based carbohydrates, ideally, if you're following me, grain-free. But they should not supersede more than really 40% of your total daily caloric value, and probably should be closer to a third. What's a good vitamin D level? Over 50, between 50 and 100 is solid. Is there an A1C level limit to, okay, I think I answered that one. What do you use to worm people? You mean to deworm people? What I personally use, I live on a farm, is I use something called intestinal defense. Maybe we can put a link up for Donna on an intestinal defense. It's a mixture of artemisinin and wormwood and other herbals that are very, very helpful. And we do a full moon deworming monthly for our humans, but also for our animals on the farm. Carnivore for 9 months. Last month I checked my glucose randomly after I ate homemade grass-fed meat chips, salt only. My glucose went up to 344 and high ketones. What's your thoughts? I think that any time you eat processed food, you're going to see blood sugar go up. Remember that protein can also elevate blood glucose. It's a myth that a lot of people don't realize that actually protein can be affecting blood glucose as well. So if you're eating meat chips, that means you probably are eating highly processed meat, and that's probably why it's driving up your blood sugar. I would encourage you to take whatever that meat chip is made from. If it was made from the ribeye, if it was made from, from whatever part of the animal, to eat the actual part of the animal, to cook that meat without the processing aspect of it, and see if your blood sugar goes up just as much. Because there's a lot of data coming out now that when people eat processed food, it will spike their blood sugar tremendously. And if they eat that same food in a non-processed form, they're getting normal blood glucose readings or reasonable blood glucose readings. So the problem with any of these diets, whether it's, if we go back in time to Atkins, it was the Atkins diet, and there's gluten-free diet, there's keto diet, there's carnivore diet, is that once the marketers and the food companies understand that there's a trend where they can capitalize and profit from these different diets, they start producing on mass scale junk food of convenience for people following these diets. And junk food, no matter what it is, whether it's gluten-free or not gluten-free, whether it's keto, whether it's carnivore, doesn't matter what it is. If it's junk food, it's junk food. It's not real food. You shouldn't eat it. And so don't fall victim to that repetitive cycle of marketers taking advantage of trends to sell you crap you don't need. That would be the best thought I could give you on it. So quit eating processed meat chips and thinking that those are healthy. They're no more healthy than eating processed potato chips or any other type of chip for that matter. I heard that it's better to eat this bad food very seldom than to eat it never because of the diversity of I'm not sure which bad food are you talking about. I heard that it is better to eat this bad food. What bad food? Because I'm not a fan of eating bad food. I mean, I know everybody's going to eat probably eat something they should, and that's just human nature. I think most people will gravitate toward that, especially around this time of the year, the holiday season. But do you have a specific food in mind or not? But I'm more of the fan of not eating bad food on a consistent basis, because love yourself enough to not poison yourself. I'm a type 2 diabetic on metformin. My last A1C was 5.9. I had a CT scan for my CLL. The scan revealed a cystic lesion on the pancreas. Now they want to do an MRI in the spring. How likely is cancer? Hard to say, John. My speculation based on that small paragraph of data is not helping you, wouldn't be helpful for you. It's not uncommon to see cystic lesions on the pancreas, so if that gives you any peace at all. But if you're type 2 diabetic on metformin and you have a cyst on your pancreas, let that be a wake-up call for you. I mean, why are you type 2 diabetic when that's a disease of choice? And I don't say that to pick on you. I just simply say that it's such an easy disease to reverse if you dial in your diet and your exercise and your sleep and your sunshine exposure and your food quality. I mean, you could be a non-diabetic not having to take metformin, within probably 3 months is a realistic goal. So get to work. And if you need help, find a good doctor who understands diet and who understands how to measure you for what should work for you as a unique individual. Because a lot of these nutritionists and a lot of these nutrition programs online are just kind of standard one-size-fits-all generic garbage advice, especially in the diabetic industry. A lot of the advice that coming from the ADA and the acolytes of the ADA, the common RDs, and this is no offense to RDs, they're great registered dietitians out there. I actually trained with a registered dietitian for a number of years, and he was a brilliant man. But the fact of the matter is that most of those individuals, or a big chunk of those individuals, are owned by corporations. I mean, they've been bought off. And so the advice you're getting is to eat things like butterscotch candy to regulate your blood sugar when it drops. And that's just, it's garbage advice. So find somebody who knows what they're doing and get good guidance and get to work. Yeah, I like that. So I stopped eating potatoes and rice, and my blood sugar went from 5.9 to 4.6 in one day. It will. Those are very high glycemic foods. Does adrenal fatigue affect glucose? It does. Initially, one of the earlier stages, Sarah, of adrenal fatigue is cortisol elevations. Elevations in cortisol over time, cortisol causes a rise in blood sugar. This is why people that take corticosteroids indefinitely for pain or inflammation or for other conditions, they end up diabetic, because that's the fate of taking those types of medicines. Now, your body makes cortisol, and so again, if you're chronically stressed or you're chronically stressing yourself out with the wrong foods, and you're pushing your adrenals into a fatigue state, then that elevated cortisol will absolutely rise or give elevation to your blood glucose, and then subsequently will create downstream elevations in insulin, and then subsequently downstream from that will create insulin resistance, and then subsequently downstream from that will create high triglycerides, fatty liver, and a whole host of other metabolic syndrome type problems that will land you in hot water. Yeah, so follow-up, Doris is saying, so if you're eating 1,500 calories a day, then 500 of them should be from carbs. Yeah, that's a good place to start. Again, it doesn't have to be exact, but it should be approximate, Doris, in that range. Hi, Dr. Osborne, not sugar-related one. Micronutrients analysts, what's the difference in between a blood intracellular test and HTMA? What do you mean by HTMA? What is that acronym that you're using as HTMA? Tell me what that means and I can give you an answer. Let's see here. Why some of the grains like oats, wheat, and rice are not listed. So if you did an LRA, if you did a lymphocyte response food sensitivity test through Gluten-Free Society, we don't test for gluten with lymphocyte response. We test for gluten using genetics, Hamid. So if you haven't done genetic testing for gluten sensitivity, it's the most accurate way to get that answer. That's why we don't test gluten on our LRA, because genetic testing is far more easy to do and far more accurate in terms of understanding gluten. Okay, so follow up to that question about intracellular test versus hair test. I'll just say it like this. Hair tests for nutrient measurement is garbage. It's junk science. It's not worth your money. There are companies online taking a lot of people's money to do hair testing to assess nutritional status. Now, it's not to say that hair can't be a valuable tool to measure certain things, but hair is not at all an actively metabolic tissue that represents any other aspect of the body. Hair is an excretion waste product that we should not be measuring nutrients in, because what's coming out in your hair has zero reflection as to what your cells are actually getting in them. Remember that we're talking about functional outcomes with vitamins and minerals. What are the functional outcomes? If you're measuring intracellular functional outcomes, you're going to get an idea of what the body is lacking and how that affects function. If you're measuring it in hair, all you're really seeing are certain things come out in hair, which has no benefit or no driving factor to help you understand whether or not you are low in a certain nutrient. So let this be a warning to any of you looking at hair testing. You see hair testing to assess micronutrient status, run the other way. It is a bad idea. lean meat like skin on chicken wings and ribeyes versus leaner meats of skinless chicken and sirloin, which is better for your blood sugar glucose levels? I'm a big believer in eating the parts of the animals. Don't throw the parts away. I mean, eat the skin, eat the collagen bits. Those are all good. And it's not that one is necessarily better or not better for your blood sugar or blood glucose, but there's a lot of nutrition in the rest of that tissue. In America, we've gravitated into a society that eats the muscle meat of animals and disregards the organs, disregard the skin, disregard the potential of the bone and the marrow in the bone. And so we lose a lot of nutrition by hand selecting just muscle meat to consume. What amount of saturated fat per day at most? I wouldn't necessarily put a cap on saturated fat, minus what we said earlier about just your total. If you want to really cap it, you cap fat as a whole, not just saturated, but all types of fat at around a third of your diet. Again, unless you're on some type of medically prescribed ketogenic diet where, again, the numbers might go way up above that third, but intentionally so. Is there any relationship between histamine intolerance and glucose? Not directly. As avocados and pomegranates have a thick skin, is there a good reason to buy organic for these foods? Yeah, because if the ground has been sprayed as well, if the fruits have been sprayed, the ground has been sprayed, what do you think the tree's going to pull its nutrient source from the ground, and so you're pulling that poison into the plant. Now, there's probably less pesticide on those thicker skin produce products, and this is what I think it's Environmental Working Group has their dirty dozen list or whatever to avoid or and their clean dozen to eat. But I'm a fan of all organic 100% of the time, just to protect yourself the best that you possibly can. Is it true that coffee can lower the risk of getting diabetes? Probably not. I mean, we could argue biochemically there are reasons that coffee might contribute to diabetes. We could also argue there are certain aspects of coffee that might give you some protection for diabetes. I think it's quantity more than anything else. I think if you're reasonable with your coffee intake, you're probably okay. Where people get into trouble with coffee is they go above that second, they get into that second cup and beyond. And some people are into that second pot and beyond. But a cup of coffee, I don't think is going to be tremendously detrimental, provided you don't have an ulcer in your stomach, provided you don't have an allergy to coffee or a crossover reaction to coffee, or that you don't have some type of hypersympathetic inflammatory problem, because coffee is a stimulant to the adrenals, and so for many people they just wouldn't tolerate coffee very well because of other underlying circumstances. But I don't think we can make any great claims about coffee preventing diabetes. Can Graves' disease affect your A1C? It can. Graves is a autoimmune disease that causes hyperthyroid issues, and that certainly can affect your blood glucose, revving up the speed at which your cells metabolize. My dad doesn't listen to my advice of quitting wheat. He has fatty liver. I tried to give him berberine with artichoke along with NAC and vitamin C, and seems to help somehow. Anything to add? Not really. I mean, there are a lot of things you could add there. If you're talking about, the fatty liver issue, you could add milk thistle as an option. You could also add directly glutathione as another option. You could add bitters. Make sure he's got bitters in his diet. But at the end of the day, if he didn't want to change his diet, all those are just supplements that may give him some benefit, but are not going to reverse fatty liver. You don't reverse fatty liver with supplements. You reverse fatty liver with behavior. And the biggest driving factor, the two biggest I've ever seen consistently, one is grain consumption driving fatty liver two ways. One through the excessive carbohydrate component of grains, the other through an autoimmune damage to the liver directly, leading to fatty accumulation and failure. And then the other is excessive carbohydrates in the diet overall. So because when the carb levels are too high, Ultimately, what happens is the liver is going to package those carbs and it's going to store them as triglycerides around itself as a mechanism to protect you from the carbohydrate overload. You could consider giving him choline, and you could also consider inositol. Those are two agents that help the liver cope and deal with fat supplementally, but keep working on him, trying to get him to change his diet. Maybe if he's feeling better with these nutrients, he'll start listening to you about other things. My fasting glucose is between 5 and 5.5, 5.6. While I am not diabetic, I'm also on true gluten-free diet for a year. It is not my real state. Any opinion on what I should check or consider? I'm not sure I understand that question. It's not my real state. I mean, you just want to, if you're talking about blood tests to kind of monitor your blood sugar, I would say, there's a handful of tests that do a pretty good job of helping you understand it. One would be hemoglobin A1C, your blood glucose fasting, your insulin fasting, your C-peptide is a good one also to measure, as well as your triglycerides. Those are all great tests to kind of keep tabs on the basics of blood glucose and blood sugar. And then beyond that, measuring micronutrient status, because the micronutrients play such a pivotal role in how you metabolize glucose. If you have deficiencies in certain ones, it doesn't matter what your diet looks like, you can still develop problems. Let's see, go up just a little bit, middle. And I have hypoglycemia along with hypothyroid. Does one impact how I deal with the other, such as diet? I mean, not really. Both of those situations are, in my opinion, diseases of behavior. So if you modify your behavior appropriately, then both of those should be able to resolve simultaneously. You hear a lot about creatine monohydrate being the best to take, but I've recently been told for my teenage boys to take creatine magna powder or power because of the magnesium benefits for absorption. What are your thoughts? Magnesium doesn't really improve the absorption of creatine. What improves the absorption of creatine monohydrate is glucose. So, what the best timing to take, especially if you're talking about young boys who are working out, best way to take creatine is after the workout, within 45 minutes after finishing the workout. And the way I would take it is I would mix the creatine in water. I would mix, 5 grams in water, drink that down with maybe eating half a piece of fruit, like a half a banana or an apple or something like that, because the sugars in the fruit naturally, the whole food, will help open up the cells to drive that creatine into the cells. Magnesium is not really going to impact it. Now, there's benefits to magnesium post-workout as well, but combining creatine and magnesium is not necessarily better than just having creatine alone. Could you please confirm if you have a fish oil suitable for individuals who have difficulty digesting regular fish oil? Yeah, we do. We have one called Ultra Omega. We put a link up for Gaia for Ultra Omega. What it has in it is, for those of you that struggle with fat absorption and fat digestion, it has lipase in it. And that lipase is designed to help you break it down and absorb it more effectively. Oh, okay. Coming back to the meat chips, I kind of went off on meat chips there for a minute. Look, if you're dehydrating, meat, that's a form of processing. And so it doesn't have to come in a bag from a manufacturer to be a processed food. And if they're driving up your blood sugar that high, even if you're dehydrating them at home, yeah, I would stop eating meat chips if it's having that kind of effect on your blood sugar. Is coffee bad for blood sugar? I think I answered that already. It's not necessarily bad for blood sugar. It's also not necessarily good for blood sugar. There are some people that when they drink coffee, their blood sugar will go up. And that a lot of that has to do with the stimulatory effect of the caffeine in the coffee, but it's not 100% true across the board. So I'd say it's more of a unique reaction. If you have that as a reaction to drinking coffee, it's probably not a great idea for you to drink it on the regular. Is it true that vitamin C has the same receptors as glucose? If so, can vitamin C repair glycated proteins? Can nattokinase help repair or break down glycated proteins? So yeah, it's true about vitamin C and glucose, and vitamin C does help to repair a lot of things. I like to look at vitamin C almost like duct tape. If you get the gist, duct tape can fix anything if you're handy. Vitamin C has so many different functions of repair in the body. It's just such a powerful nutrient. As far as nattokinase helping repair or break down glycated proteins, I haven't seen any literature directly on that. That's not to say that it might not be true. I can't make that claim off my own knowledge base. What's more nutritious, pig's feet or oxtails? I don't know. I think we'd have to run those things through some lab to be able to assess the nutritional density of each one. So I couldn't comment off the top of my head. Do you recommend supplementing magnesium with higher doses of B1, specifically the fat soluble versions? I'm asking for 900 to 1200 milligrams. So you want to take 900 to 1200 milligrams of vitamin B1. Yeah, it's a good idea to take magnesium with it. The two work together as coenzymes for a number of reactions. And if your magnesium is low and you're driving a lot of B1 in, you might be symptomatic from too much B1. So it's never a bad idea to add them together. So what does it mean that after I eat, sometimes my blood sugar never responds and it's typically always low? You probably have nutritional deficit, Tara. I would surmise vanadium, chromium, magnesium, vitamin D, zinc as being potential reasons why that's happening. Those nutrients play a role at helping glucose get from your blood into your cell to generate energy. So if you're experiencing a lot of dizziness, it could be that your blood sugar is dropping. It also could be that when you're eating, you have a slow transit time, and so you're not seeing that postprandial rise in blood glucose the way a lot of other people do. So you might also consider digestive enzymes in that regard. NAC seems to be constipating me. I know you love this supplement. Any suggestions? You could try, if it's constipating, you could just try it at lower doses. I mean, everybody's a little different when it comes to dosing structure. And I try to give just kind of general ideas and ranges as to where a person can start. But it's a highly unique scenario. A lot of people, when they take too much NAC, they can get constipation, they can get even like stomach upset. And so in those individuals, what we typically do is we just reduce their dose. My legs swell, I have neuropathy. What's the best treatment, like a vitamin to take? I'm pre-diabetic, I eat right. So eating right, that doesn't mean much to me because a lot of people tell me they eat right, and when we start really diving in, they're eating what they think is right based on their current knowledge set. Or they're eating foods that for them may seem healthy but aren't healthy because they're reactive to those foods. So Vicky, what I would suggest, if your legs are swelling and you have a neuropathy and you're pre-diabetic, you're probably not eating right for you. And so getting that dialed in would be very important as a step to navigate the why. You might consider food sensitivity testing. I don't know if you're gluten-free or grain-free, but you might also consider genetic testing also. Because leg swelling like that with neuropathy, there's a big problem. Don't underestimate the size of the problem that you have. That's serious. That means your nerves in your legs are dying, and your heart is so weak that it can't pull the water from ground up, and so your feet are swelling, your legs are swelling. That's not a light thing. That's a serious problem. Now, if you want a couple of options as far as supplements are concerned to see if that is at all helpful, you could look at CoQ10 in the neighborhood of 200 to 500 milligrams a day. You could also look at vitamin B1. You could also look at vitamin B12 and vitamin B5, all playing a major role in producing the myelin sheath that wraps around your peripheral nerves to, keep them insulated So those are just all things you can try. My thoughts on coffee enemas, take them or leave them. I don't think healthy people should have to do coffee enemas all the time to continue to be healthy. I think some very, very sick people who are trying to battle very serious illnesses will benefit tremendously from a coffee enema, but as a general rule of thumb, it's not something that I would say you need to have as a daily part of your life in order to maintain good health. Can you advise on whether the carnivore diet with fruit is the best human diet? If not, what would you say is the optimal human diet for vitality? I don't think there is an optimal human diet for vitality. I think the reason why you have people that swear by vegetarianism and you have people that swear by carnivore diets and people that swear by keto and swear by every other diet under the moon is because people are different. And I think if we stop to just say, look, let's respect that people have different needs. And let's also respect the fact that during the life cycle, there are different needs beyond it, that change even beyond. For example, when a woman has her cycles, she might need to eat certain foods more to replenish the blood loss from that cycle. If a man starts working out aggressively, his current diet, which might have suited him fine when he wasn't working out, may no longer be suiting him because he's not getting the vital nutrients to repair, restore, recover from working out. So I think to say what's the ideal diet, I think anyone who tells you this is the ideal diet is full of it, and they're selling you something. I think you have to have an understanding that we're all different and we all have different needs, which is why I've always been an advocate of objective. You're sick, especially. I've always been an advocate of testing. Test, don't guess. Get it dialed in. Figure out what is the ideal diet for you so that you have a blueprint instead of a generic piece of advice to just follow and then a dogmatic group of people that are all gung-ho about a particular diet. I see so many times, doesn't matter what diet you talk about, where people leave that diet because they follow it for a while and then they start getting sick. Maybe they felt better initially and then they start getting sick. And so again, I don't think there's an optimal ideal diet, human diet. I think there are a lot of varieties amongst human needs, and there's a lot of cyclic changes that people need to be aware of so that they can change their diet as their behaviors change or as their needs for certain nutrients might change under other conditions. So hopefully that's helpful. That's why I recommend testing. I see the ultrabutyrate is out of stock. Do you know how long it takes to come back in? Yeah, we'll probably have it back in a couple weeks, a week or two, Lita. Is it hard on your blood sugar to consume 6 tablespoons of high omega-rich seeds, 2 tablespoons each of flax, chia, and hemp with mostly fruit-based raw vegan fruit smoothie meal? Is it hard on your blood? I'd say maybe. Measure your blood sugar. But I'm not a fan. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat omega-rich seeds, but I just don't want anybody reading this or hearing this question to have the misconception that by eating flax, chia, and hemp that you're somehow going to have adequate amounts of EPA and DHA, because those seeds and the type of fat in them is not technically omega-3. It's what's called linolenic acid, which is a precursor to EPA and DHA. And so I've never seen a case yet, that doesn't mean that person out there doesn't exist that could prove me wrong, but I haven't seen a case in 22 years where somebody could correct their omega-3 status using what you're calling omega-rich seeds. Again, that doesn't mean you can't have those seeds. It doesn't mean that those seeds are bad for you. It doesn't mean that there's not other nutritional benefits there. I don't know if I answered your question, but I'd say if you're wondering about the blood sugar component, get a blood glucose monitor and check your blood sugar after that smoothie. Is SPECT scan to the brain, is there a prevention protocol to do? Is there another part to that question? So, okay, no. So, I mean, if you're going to go in and you're going to get one of these scans where they inject you with a dye, is there a prevention protocol? You can take you can take high-dose vitamin C, high-dose NAC, and glutathione as just a kind of a means to help give your body support for protection from some of that dye. And then after the scan is done, I have a formula that I use called Ultra Metal Detox, and so that's something that we can put a link up for you. But what it does is it helps bind that garbage and pull it out of you. It helps support your body's ability to get that stuff out of you after the scan. Does Hashimoto's and celiac have anything to do with each other? Absolutely. There's a number of studies that show that people with celiac disease I don't know the exact statistic, but the level of people or the quantity of people with celiac disease who also develop Hashimoto's is very, very high. There's definitely what they call disease association between the two. Now, my experience, Maritza, is that generally the people with Hashimoto's, they have Hashimoto's because they're eating gluten. We know gluten can elevate Hashimoto antibodies. Now, what a lot of celiacs are taught is that go off of wheat, go off of barley and rye, sometimes oats, but most celiacs are taught that corn and rice and oats are okay. And what I have seen is that corn, rice, and oats are not okay. And this is oftentimes, especially in celiacs, a reason why a lot of celiacs may feel better changing their diet, but still continue to struggle with conditions like Hashimoto's and other autoimmune diseases because they're still eating the other grains, which also contain gluten. They're just different forms of gluten. I think I answered this. Christina's asking about parasite cleanse as an herbal. We have something called intestinal defense, Christina, if you want to check that out. That's what we like to use. So Liga is asking, says, I ordered your nutrition deficiency test and made an appointment for my blood draw. Once that's done, are you available to go over the results? No, I don't. I mean, when you order online, you're ordering online, you're going to get your data and your information, but I'm not going to have a follow-up appointment with you. The only way you do a follow-up appointment with me or any appointment with me is you call my office and you get something set up where we have an in-depth meeting and we go through a lot of different things and have like I said, an in-depth conversation and get to the bottom or the root of what you want to try to accomplish in your nutrition and in your health. When are you going to ship to Sweden? It's, with other countries it's tough because the biggest issue is customs. Things get held up in customs, even when you're using different carriers. So we're working something out. We've got a friend in, I think it's Norway. We're trying to get him set up to be able to offer a lot of the services that we offer through Gluten-Free Society to the folks in the European region. So hopefully that's going to happen sooner rather than later for you. Do you have an opinion on dosages versus types of chromium? Yeah, chromium dosing anywhere from really 600 to 1200 micrograms a day as a starting place, if your chromium levels are low. As far as forms, chromium polynicotinate is arguably one of the better forms, but there are other chelate versions of chromium that are also effective. Gluconate, glycinate, citrate, etc. Is Celtic sea salt in water every day enough for magnesium, or do I have to take a supplement? It depends on the rest of your diet. If your diet is rich in magnesium in other ways, you may, sea salt is not the only way you're going to get minerals. Is Lugol's iodine okay when one has normal thyroid function? Yeah, I mean, you could be iodine deficient and still have normal thyroid function. You could have, a lot of people are scared of iodine because there are certain books that are out there that talk about the dangers of iodine to the thyroid. I think those dangers are tremendously overstated for the vast majority of people. What would the symptoms be for undiagnosed diabetes? There's a lot of potential things. A deterioration of your vision being blamed on age, water retention under the skin, so puffiness, under the eyes, puffiness in the hands. If you can't see your vascularity in your arms and hands, it's generally, in a lot of people, it's because of water retention. If you're gaining weight, that's a symptom. You could have, you could have some of the classic symptoms, the excessive thirst, the excessive urination, or, those are what we call classic diabetic symptoms. You could have memory loss or brain fog. You could have low energy or fatigue. You could be more prone to injury. So lots of kind of nuanced small things that generally doctors won't make a big deal out of. Most of the medical testing for diabetes is designed to catch diabetes in its late stage. By the time your A1C is sky high and your blood glucose is sky high, you've had diabetes for over a decade. It's just that you have had doctors saying it's not a big deal until they just wait for the end stage, right? Because the testing they're using is designed to catch end stage disease. It's not designed to catch it early. Excessive sweaty hands and feet, what's causing that? Lots of things. It could be too much caffeine. It could also be that she's eating foods that she has subacute reactions to. That's a very common cause. It's food. What foods are sources for vanadium? A number of different vegetables, nuts, and seeds also can be good sources for vanadium. A number of meats as well, fish and beef. Should I wear a continuous glucose monitor while I'm dieting? It's up to you. You can. Wearing one can be very helpful for a lot of people who are trying to kind of dial it in and get the kind of nuanced detail around how different foods affect blood sugar. I personally don't wear one to collect that kind of data, but again, don't let my personal choice affect you or influence if it's something you feel like would be helpful for you. What are the benefits of IV therapy and red light therapy? I'm not a fan of IV therapy typically. I'm not saying there aren't benefits. There certainly can be. But I think most people can accomplish great health without the need of visiting IV centers. As far as red light therapy, go back and watch our show. I did an entire show on red light therapy. Denise will post a link for you. It's not a waste of money. I have a red light at home that I use on a regular basis. It's phenomenal. Diagnosed fatty liver due to celiac, no gluten, great diet. When will gas and floating stool subside? It's a tough question to answer, Robert, because I don't know how long you've been on what you were calling a great diet. If you've been on that great diet for a year now, and you're still having gas and floating stool, you're not on a great diet for you, and you're missing something. And it may not be just because it's celiac disease is your diagnosis. There could also be other foods you're reactive to that are causing, dysfunction in your bowels. So that's definitely could be an issue, that there's something you're missing just because there just hasn't been a detailed analysis. Additionally, with celiac, a lot of celiacs, post-diagnosis are malnourished, tremendously so, especially those with floating stool. Floating stool is an indicator for fat malabsorption, meaning that either your liver isn't adequately producing bile and that bile's not making it to your intestine effectively to help you absorb, fat, including vitamins A, D, E, and K, and omega-3 fats. And so your gut may not fully repair as long as you're malnourished. So what some celiacs have to do is get their nutrition status checked and then high dose supplementation to overcome the years of gluten-induced damage to get the nutrition to heal and repair the GI tract. And they have to overcome that malnutrition by, in some cases, megadosing. So you might also consider doing micronutrient testing to determine that. Can my B vitamins levels be unbalanced if I take B complex and B12 and B1 and biotin separately? Yeah, they absolutely can. Test, don't guess. That's the easiest way to know. What exercises and supplements are good for bulging discs? Depending on the location of the bulging disc, Sabrul, you might want to look up McKenzie exercises. And McKenzie, there are exercises for the cervical spine. There are also exercises for the lumbar spine. If you have bulging discs in either of those areas, there are specific exercises that can be quite helpful. As far as supplementation is concerned, just in general, a super quality multivitamin along with high doses of vitamin C are places I would start with. Also, I would probably take a collagen, an extra collagen supplement to get that up. So those are all things that you can start with. Is it possible to have nodules on both sides of the thyroid and not have hypothyroidism? It is in my case, but I still suffer from pain. Oh, because of the nodules, the hoarseness that can be created. Yeah, you can have normal functioning and normal, or you could have normal levels of T3, T4, and TSH and have nodules on your thyroid. Angel, you definitely want to look into iodine deficiency as a potential there. If I breathe in gluten every day at my work, do you recommend a gluten digestive supplement to take every day or get a new job? I'd say if you're gluten sensitive or celiac and you're in an environment where you're being exposed to 20 parts per million or greater of gluten on a daily basis as a result of working there, you should find a new job. No amount of gluten enzyme is going to help you if you're getting that level of exposure. And plus it's exposure, if you're breathing it in, it's not going into your gut, it's going into your lung. And so in that situation, until you get out of it, I wouldn't recommend necessarily something like Gluten Shield more than I would recommend NAC, N-acetylcysteine. What's the best B12 supplement? Methylcobalamin. For most people, methylcobalamin, although hydroxycobalamin is also a good form of vitamin B12. We have both versions on Gluten-Free site if you want to check those out. Okay. More questions, but not more time. Guys, I got to run. Thanks so much for joining me this Thursday and sharing your time with me. As always, make sure if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not already, hit that subscribe button. And also, if you want some free gifts and some great information on how to navigate chronic inflammatory disease with diet change and nutrition, come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. Sign up there for our free newsletter, and we'll send you a bunch of high-quality free information to help you navigate your nutrition in the right direction. We'll see you back here next Tuesday for another show in the Dr. Osborne Zone. Have a great week.